The latest batch of unemployment figures paints a grim picture for South Africa. Joblessness has risen to record highs, with youth and black women hardest hit by a problem which already existed prior to COVID-19. While the expanded definition of unemployment, this includes discouraged job seekers, has risen to 74% among those aged between 15 and 24. We're joined by Emmanuel Hanaka, who is the Director for Youth Legislation and Policy at the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability. Emmanuel, good evening, and thank you so much for your time. Just hearing those numbers, it's very clear that the young people of this country have been failed by this government.
Thank you so much, Kathy, and good evening to the viewers. So, of course, the statistics that just came out today are disheartening, especially when they come out today on the 1st of June, when we start the month-long celebration of Youth Month. I think it's a sobering sort of statistics to then say to us that young people really don't have much to celebrate in South Africa. And, of course, there are a myriad of causes to that effect. However, it's a wake-up call to all of us as government, as civil society, and of course the private sector to say, let us commit today as we start Youth Month to say we want to have tangible actions that really change the situation that face our young people in South Africa today.
Emmanuel, the wake-up call can't be today. Today is simply a position that emphasizes that some of the decisions around policy that have been implemented by government over the last couple of years have simply not been working. But the crisis around youth unemployment has been with us for some time. So it's not a wake-up call today. The alarm bells have been going off, but these figures tell us that nothing is being done about it.
Well, I'll agree with you when you say that the wake-up call is not today. The challenge has been growing. And I think one of the key reasons for our unemployment, high unemployment numbers, specifically for the young people, is the structural nature of the challenge of unemployment, right? So, of course, there are many policies that have been implemented, some with moderate success, some with limited success, but we really need to ensure that going forward, right, especially now in 2021, whatever we do is based on evidence. Whatever we do has got the most impact. So to that effect, our department has recently launched a national youth policy that was approved by Cabinet last year, which aims to ensure that our young people are attended to and are really assisted in a holistic view. Right? We do not view unemployment only as an economic issue. There are many other challenges that intersect at a young person's level at the same time. Issues of mental health, issues of disease burden, issues of abuse, gender-based violence, etc. So we need a holistic approach as a whole of society in order to deal with those challenges.
Talk to me about the solutions. You as the department by now should be updating us in terms of some of the successes that you have from the implementations of plans that show that you've been working or at least trying to work on this problem.
Absolutely. I think South Africa, from an education perspective, maybe let me start by saying that the youth policy targets 5 key pillars. The first one being the issue of quality education for young people, as well as skills development and second chances, to ensure that our young people are able to participate in the workforce through the skills that they provide, right? But also looking at the areas of the fourth industrial revolution. The issues of the economy I spoke about, but we need to ensure that there is massive job creation, specifically now that we are in a challenge of COVID-19 where many jobs have been lost. How do we use entrepreneurship to ensure that many young people are able to transition into the economy? There's issues of mental health and physical health, so that young people are able to reap the rewards of the education system, which largely has been successful because we can see numbers of young people that are in the universities have increased, numbers of young people that are in TVET colleges have increased, even though we are quite aware that many of those young people exit, especially TVET colleges, to unemployment, right? We know that graduate unemployment is actually a bit quite lower than the national average in terms of unemployment. So those are the successes that we can claim. However, we should never sit on our laurels, right? Because the challenge of unemployment is persistent, the The challenge of unemployment is current. And these are not just statistics. These are people. Behind those numbers, 63%, etc., are young people. Some of them are our brothers, our sisters. They live next to us. They live in our households, and they are frustrated, and they really have nothing to celebrate. So we need to work on those.
It's interesting to me that you cite the issue of education as being one of the successes, and yet you acknowledge that a portion of those who have gone through schooling, and that's what these latest figures show us, right, that there are unemployed graduates who are sitting at home between, especially in the age group of 24, and they simply don't have any possibilities of finding employment at this stage. How can that be a success? And the kind of message that it then sends to young people who you are encouraging to continue with the schooling system, when the reality right now for them does not seem to bring any kind of reward.
Absolutely. But as I said earlier, the graduate unemployment, if you look at it and compare it to the unemployment of young people who did not go to any tertiary education, is quite low. But we're not saying it's low enough. There needs to be effective strategies to reduce it to zero, right? However, with that being said, we should celebrate the positive while we try to address the negative. Right now, we are sitting in a situation where we know that there's COVID-19, there is the advent of the fourth industrial revolution, which has been said to bring opportunities for many, but also some of the jobs that are there might disappear.
What are the proposals in terms of the structural reform of the economy that you, as the department that effectively handles youth policy in this country, have brought before government, even before the office of the presidency, for consideration?
Absolutely. There are some interventions which are worthy of mentioning, which are there. The presidential youth employment intervention, the economic stimulus that is there, right? Those are quick wins that we need to sort of expand and expatiate on.
But all of those options, sorry to interrupt there, all of those options, number one, have failed in terms of the targets that had initially been set up. And number two, they offer very short-term employment for young people. The bulk of those who become part of those programs don't actually stay in a job.
So if you look at what the policy proposes, right, we are calling for demand side and supply side interventions to ensure that young people are encouraged to train and be skilled in the fields that are relevant to the economy. That's number one. But also from the demand side, companies that are there, the private sector, are able to make investments in the short term that will immediately enable young people to play a role in the economy. We know that whenever there's an economic crunch, young people are the first to go. So we need to deal with those challenges. The policy also really mandates or requests all of society to say that the request for experience on young people who are for entry-level jobs should really be done away with. But also, we're talking about interventions to enable young people to find a job. Right now, many young work seekers are discouraged. They are sitting in rural areas. They don't even have the 450 that they need to print out a CV. They don't have money to go to town and look for work. So we are calling for different interventions that will ensure that young people are able to be supported in looking for work. That's one. But also, we know that many of our young people stay in townships and rural areas. We need to have interventions that are outlined, if you look at the policy itself, to strengthen and support the township and rural economies, to ensure that young people really get opportunities right where they are and right where they stay. They don't necessarily need to flock to Gautengs and Durban to be able to find jobs.
The reality is that, on some level, it's good to have this in policy, but if that policy is not translating itself to the lived experience of the young people of this country, it means absolutely nothing.
Absolutely. I think many of us, even your viewers, will say that South Africa is known for having good policies on paper. But the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We need to ensure that there is proper implementation. So as a department, with our partners, we are taking numerous steps to ensure that there is accountability in terms of the pillars of the youth policy itself. We are currently in the process of developing a monitoring and evaluation framework which will have strong indicators, strong outcomes, strong output indicators, strong impact indicators that will show young people that the policy that they've been consulted on and have approved is really working for them.
What have you done? What have you done so far to show that you are holding government accountable where this policy is concerned?
Absolutely. There are strong actions that are being taken. For example, right now we are also in the process of developing what we call a framework legislation for South Africa. So what that means is that, you know, sometimes policies in themselves, they are quite broad, they are consultative, and they require all of us to buy in. And there has been instances where people see policy proposals as just mere suggestions, as opposed to things that need to be implemented for us to turn around the situation of South Africa. That's why we're moving towards a framework legislation called the South African Youth Development Act, which will ensure that what we commit in policy is also committed in law, right? We've seen that legislation has been a strong tool for the achievement of rights for children and rights for women, etc. So we are also moving in that direction to ensure that we've got a strong legislative framework to ensure that what is contained in the policy is implemented. But of course, we continue within the spirit of intergovernmental framework to engage departments, right? We always talk about youth responsive planning and youth responsive budgeting, that whatever we do should always have young people in mind. Young people are one of the largest cohorts in the demographics of South Africa. And if we ignore them, the consequences of ignoring young people will be dire for all of society.
Well, unfortunately, the numbers show that young people are being ignored. It's not a question of if, it's a reality for the majority of them in this country. Let's leave it there for tonight. Emmanuel Hanaka is the Director of Youth Legislation and Policy at the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability.